My friends, we have some breaking news. Due to the poor box office performance of Furiosa and The Fall Guy, movie theaters from across the globe have unanimously voted to close their doors. My advice to everybody out there is just to start panicking, like as much as you can, and then tweet about it a lot.
What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
And obviously, I'm just kidding. But if you do follow the film industry, you've no doubt been seeing sort of the mass perplexion of the 2024 box office numbers so far. Some of the bigger IP films have done well, or pretty much any film with Timothée Chalamet has done well. But we're seeing a really big change in the industry when it comes to big budget movies and their performance. I have a lot to say about why I think this is happening, and also why I think everything is going to be just fine. But welcome back to my channel, my friends. As always, make sure you smash like and then subscribe if you're new here. If you did hit subscribe, it would make me really happy, and I'd have to say, what a wonderful day! But okay, just to retread here, box office numbers are down. Why? I want to dig into that question today because it's very interesting and there are a lot of answers. I think the first being streaming. People don't want to leave their homes if they can access so many other options in the comfort of their living room. Wait a minute, so you're telling me I have to get up off my couch? I'd also say, and this is a huge one, the quick release of movies from theaters to video on demand. And that kind of falls into the streaming category. Why go to the theater if the movie that you're going to go to the theater for is just going to be available to watch in your home in like 2 weeks? And then there's the price of going to the movie theater. I'm a big movie guy, and so I have the Alamo Drafthouse season pass, and I kind of have my own little routine. And so it's worth it for me to see 2 movies a week, but for other people, that's not the case. A lot of people out there, if they want to go to a movie, they're trying to plan for the weekend, or they have a family, and with kids, that comes snacks and popcorn and ices, which ices are actually bomb, by the way. But that shit adds up, and the price of admission is up as well. You know, it varies from state to state. I've seen on Twitter people complaining about this and being like, I can't go to the movie theater because it's $20 for a ticket. You know, where I am, that's definitely not the case. It's still relatively cheap to go to the movies, but I can understand that struggle. If you're living in a state and it costs that much to go to the movies, why would you? But then there's also just the trust of the audience. And for me, I mean, just like thinking about this is the one that really broadens the conversation. Maybe you're a moviegoer that in the last couple of years, you were like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the theater this weekend, and you went and you saw that movie, and aside from some crazy special effects, you just found yourself not connecting to the story, and you kind of felt like you were misled by the studio. I'm looking at you, Fast X. And you thought it was a cash grab, or maybe you disliked the politics of the movie industry. Left or right, you might be out there thinking that every time you go to the movies, there's some sort of overt message being thrown at your family, and you'd just rather not deal with that. The movie industry has always been intertwined with politics, but the world we live in socially these days is heavily politicized, and people have very strong opinions, and although, like I said, it's always kind of been around, these days it's more of a staple discussion. I think when you're living online, there's just a lot of toxicity, you know, there's like a spectrum of it, and some way, somehow, it almost feels like every single piece of art is going to get torn down by one side or the other. But then aside from that, there's also just movie etiquette, and I promise they're not paying me to say this, but you know, for me, I'm a bit biased because I go to Alamo Drafthouse. It's like the best theater in the world. Like, I freaking love going. There's no distractions, nobody interrupting you, but why are you going to pay your money to go to your local theater if somebody's going to be sitting in front of you, talking on their phone, texting, recording the screen? Like, there's so many stories that I've heard, like horror stories of being in the theater and fights breaking out, and that's just another thing that turns the audiences off. Why would you want to leave your home, you know? There are so many reasons not to get up and go to the movie theater, but a lot of people are saying this. Does this spell the end of movie theaters? And I think no, because I still have faith in the cinematic experience. But if that cinematic experience is going to survive, studios and movie theaters alike are gonna have to adapt. And that means that the films that we're seeing in movie theaters are going to change. Because times have changed, and when that happens, you gotta get with the program. There's a huge example of this right now with The Fall Guy. I truly feel like it's easy to criticize the studio for this one, because this is a movie, it's featuring a couple big celebrities, a couple big movie stars, but it's about a show that nobody from my generation even remembers. And this movie had a budget of between $130 and $150 million. Why? I'm sorry, but a Ryan Gosling stuntman movie costing that much is not gonna do the numbers that you're wanting. And maybe they were seeing something that I'm not seeing. They have a lot of people far better at their jobs than I to even criticize. But I mean, just from my point of view, I feel like it's a big mistake. I would not write that check. I don't even think I have checks. Now, if this movie could have been made for like 50 million, maybe it could have been a success. But why 130 million? It's the same thing that happened to Dial of Destiny. Indiana Jones is a big IP, yes. But with a budget of $400 million, what are you expecting to happen? Harrison Ford is in his 80s, man. And I don't think kids are going to be lining up to see him crack the whip. You know, I certainly was, but I'm a guy in his 30s that grew up with those films. A lot of us are still hanging on to the rope of that IP. They're always going to get me into the theater for an Indiana Jones film. And I also know that with this, specific example, there's a larger conversation surrounding it with the pandemic. But the point is, studio budgets have gotten out of control, and the risk is not worth the reward. And the adaptation that I'm talking about is going to come when they realize that they have to cut back. Realize what these independent studios and smaller studios have been doing, like A24. It's very smart. Look at the film Everything Everywhere, or just like the horror genre in general. This is like a casual example, but The Strangers Chapter 1, for instance, whatever you thought about that movie aside, it was made for $8.5 million and it's already made like $25 million. That's a success, and obviously I don't expect Disney to be making an $8.5 million movie, but maybe 80? Or 70, maybe? Maybe even if you can say that with that amount of money, make some smaller, more passionate projects. Give the artist freedom again. And if you're going to spend the money, make sure it's something that's gonna count. Like Dune Part 2, for instance, that's a huge example for me. You let Denis Villeneuve follow his vision, his creative vision, and look what happened. And I certainly know that everything across the board is more expensive right now. And it sucks. But when you're looking at the budgets of some of these films, you're like, it can't be because of that, though. There's a lot of excess, and I think that they're starting to recognize that. At least we've now seen Marvel hopefully learn this lesson, and I'll get to the comic book movie stuff. But when you really look at the audience right now, there are two groups. There are people like me that just go and see everything that comes out because we love going to the movie theater. I'd say artsy genre junkies kind of fall into that as well. But then there is the casual audience, and what casual audiences are coming out for these days more than anything are event films. You want to know why Avatar: The Way of Water made $2 billion? It's because you had to see it in the theater. You want to know why Top Gun Maverick made a boatload of money? Because you had to see it in the theater. It was a spectacle, and both of those movies still managed to have very compelling stories. And then on the other side of that, you have to look at what else is working. You have these rising stars in Hollywood. You have Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Jenna Ortega, Austin Butler. I mean, look at Wonka. Family-friendly, solid IP, and the world's most current, charming young man. That spells success. And this is why Furiosa is interesting. It's easy enough to kind of see what's happening here. Mad Max Fury Road wasn't a smash success by any means, and the IP itself has never been that massive. And so if you're kind of reading between the lines here, it's like you take that IP that hasn't been that popular, you give it an even bigger budget, and the story kind of just writes itself, unfortunately. The movie is awesome, in my opinion, so please go support it if you haven't seen it already so that hopefully we can get another one. But if they did that, hopefully they would lower the budget? I don't know, and all of that leads me to comic book movies. The box office darlings, if you will, but times are changing here too. To me, it almost seems like Disney and Warner Brothers got a little comfy and they let the quality slip. There's something about superheroes that are always going to draw in the audience, but not if the stories that are being told aren't given the care that they deserve or move away from the characters. These movies have to become compelling again. The Batman is the best modern example of this. It wasn't some big team-up crazy movie. It was an intimate story about the world's greatest detective, and then you add on the Batman IP, and boom. And so you see that, and then you see a movie like Madam Web, and you're like, what the hell are we doing? Why are you spending so much money on this? Audiences get turned off when they're treated like they're dumb. And it's easy to get worked up, and it's easy to look at all of this and be like, oh man, I don't know if this is gonna work out. But I don't think that streaming or the box office numbers right now spell doom in any shape or form. To me, I'm actually thankful for it, because fingers crossed, it might mean that studios are going to adapt, and we may start getting more middle budget films that trust their writers and filmmakers. And the big budget films that we still do get hopefully are learning from this, and hopefully they start giving us some really compelling stuff. Low-key, the genre that's just been like sticking around and doing this right the whole time is just the horror genre. And so I think we can trust that that's not going anywhere at all. And streaming is going to do what it's going to do. And yes, a lot of movies are going to go straight there, but if they learn anything about this like quick release to video on demand, like I'm just very much hoping that they adapt, because I really do feel like the theater will always have a place in society. Nothing is going to change that as long as the industry adapts and listens. You can call me optimistic, but it's only going to get better. I truly feel like we're at the start of something really awesome rather than at the end of something. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, and I don't even know if that makes sense to me, but that is my rant for the day. And so I appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Jones,